Bend and Scoop is brought to you by Harder Concepts, the best bars in North Dallas. Eat, drink, party harder.
I love Bend and Scoop, man.
You want to hear some music? You'd like that, wouldn't you? Well, today you're going to get all the music you want.
The request lines are now open. KGFJ Soul Radio.
Do it now, man.
Request lines are up.
It's open, man.
Got any Blue Oyster Cult?
No, I don't have any Blue Oyster Cult. I ate 34 pairs last time around. Where were you? I was that close to working at 7-Eleven, you know.
Pass the word along. Tell the men it's time to shoot the moon.
Shoot the moon!
Out there on the microphone. On the microphone.
Shoot the moon. Shoot the moon.
The attitude dictates that you don't care whether she comes, stays, lays, or prays. I mean, whatever happens, your toes are still tapping.
Hey, Strawberry! Oh, Strawberry. Hey, what's happening, man? How you doing? This is my friend.
Hey, how you doing, man?
What you looking at, man?
Oh, nothing. I wasn't looking. I wasn't looking at his neck, man.
Can you honestly tell me that you forgot the magnetism of Robin Zander or the charisma of Rick Nielsen?
That's kid stuff.
Kid stuff. Well, how about the tunes? I want you to want me. The Dream Police. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Build your muscles picking strawberries. You know, Bend and Scoop.
Maybe I could get you a job with United Fruit. I got a buddy with United Fruit. Start with strawberries, you might work your way up to these goddamn bananas. When, boy, are you gonna get your act together?
We're creating a society of cell phone crazed, marijuana smoking zombies.
Coming to you not quite live from Lukewarm Tallboy Studios deep in the land of Gar, this is Bend and Scoop, the podcast featuring music, mirth, and minutia, focused on exposing artists you probably haven't heard, but should. I'm Bob, and I'll be your tour guide on this amazingly asymmetric auditory adventure as we journey to the center of your cochlea. Welcome to episode 69. Nice. Bend and Scoop is brought to you by Harder Concepts, the best bars in North Dallas. Visit one of the now 6 great Harder Concepts locations in DFW, including Scruffy Duffy's, Ringo's Pub, and the brand new Bottle Rockets, all at the Shops at Legacy in Plano, Saintsbury Tavern at Austin Ranch in the Colony, the Mucky Duck at Addison Circle in Addison, and Addison Ice House at Vitruvian Park in Addison. All Harder Concepts locations have great food, live music, an amazing beer and spirit selection, and a wait staff that's second to none. Whether you want to hang out with old friends or meet some new ones, there's no better place to get together and watch your favorite sports or hear some awesome tunes. Eat, drink, party harder. Joining us at the end of the show to play a round of Is That Your Vinyl Answer in the Groovin' After Party will be our special guest, Mistress Carrie, from the Mistress Carrie podcast. We spread the gospel of vinyl here at Bend and Scoop, so be sure to tell us all about your favorite neighborhood record store by posting to @BendScoop on Twitter or Instagram using the hashtag #SpinMomandPop. Our record store of the week, as recommended by none other than Mistress Carrie herself, is Joe's Albums in Worcester, Massachusetts. You can follow them on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Joe's Albums. And you can check out their website at joesalbums.com. Kicking things off for this episode is a band from New Orleans called Waste Man. This is from their brand new album, One Day It'll All Be You. The song is Proofreaders, Singles, and Philosophers.
You thought you would be the conqueror. Yeah, you thought
That was the first of what will be 3 consecutive bands from Seattle. That one was Lysol from their 2021 album Soup for My Family. That song was Drank My Pride. Plausible Deniability is a monthly podcast I co-host with my pal David Miller, which you can follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Pause Deny. We post new episodes on the first day of every month. The second of our 3 consecutive Seattle bands up next is Black Ferns. This is off their 2015 self-titled album. The song is She Said.
Say Why can't we just run the plant the way we did before? I mean, we did pretty good.
If you did pretty good, then why are you...
Present our ideas. Do not be influenced by the fact that we are going to give you your first executive position with a very big raise in pay.
No. Why would I? No, I won't be influenced by that. This is great.
Assuming, of course, that the factory does open.
Right. Well, I already assumed that.
We did not.
Can we count on you?
Fellas, the frog's ass watertight.
Watertight oneなんだろう。Yes, we believe it is.
Closing out our Seattle threefer, that was Tres Leches from their 2018 single, What Are You Doing? Campfire Songs is a podcast where I get together with my buddies Todd, Jim, and Tom to share and discuss songs with each other. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Songs Campfire and give us a listen for more great music. From Chicago, here's one of my favorite band names ever, and my youngest son will enjoy this one as well. This is The Lipshits from their 2021 album Chevron, and this song is Lack Lion.
Take me back
From Melbourne, Australia, that was Delivery. From their brand new EP, Yes We Do, that song was The Explainer. Have you ever wanted to host a podcast? Well, all you have to do to join the mic hunt and host your very own episode of Assume the Juxtaposition is send me your topic idea to lukewarmtallboy@gmail.com. You can follow Assume the Juxtaposition on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at AssumeTJPod. Up next from Atlanta is Gigi King. From his brand new 2021 album Remain Intact, this is Melt on You.
This is Looney Tunes.
Looney Tunes?
漫画に出る有名な言葉です。わかると思いますが、いつもテレビに出るんです。That's all, folks.
That was Chain Cult from Athens, Greece. Usually if we have a band here from Athens, they're from Georgia, but this one was from the original Athens. It's from a 2021 single, We're Not Alone. How Many is a podcast where I get together with my friends Jesse, Junior, Gary, and Scott to debate a variety of pop culture topics, including movies, sports, TV, music, and more. You can follow How Many on Twitter at HowManyPodcast and listen at HowManyPodcast.com. And don't forget to stick around for the end of the show when we'll be joined in the Groovin' After Party by our very special guest, Mistress Carrie from the Mistress Carrie podcast. Up next, from Baltimore by way of New Orleans, is Sick Thoughts. From their self-titled 2018 album, this is Hellhole.
Collectors ringing, 10th time we go. I'm living in a hellhole, baby. I've been working like an animal. I'm living in a hellhole, baby. I've been working like an animal. I'm living in a hellhole, baby. It doesn't feel so right. I got the hounds of Hades walking all night. Roaches in the kitchen, rats in the bath. The stress is making me sick. Oh, police go na 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 na. I'm living in a hellhole, baby. I've been working like an animal. I'm living in a hellhole, baby. I've been working like an animal. I'm living in a hellhole, baby. It doesn't feel so right. I got the hounds of Hades walking all night.
Look what's coming in your mail. It says, get 11 albums for only $1 when you join the Columbia Record and Tape Club. Terrific? Well, I'm about to tell you how to go this offer one better and get 12 records or tapes instead of 11 for that very same dollar. First, look inside. You'll see over 300 great albums. It's easy to find 12 you want because you have a choice of all the top labels, the music and performers you want most to hear, like Chicago.
Baby, what a big surprise. Right before my very
Barry Manilow.
But it's daybreak. If you wanna believe there can be daybreak. Ain't no time.
Peter Frampton.
I'm in you. You're in me.
The Carpenters.
Calling occupants of interplanetary craft.
The Captain and Tennille.
Love will
and Stevie Wonder, James Taylor, Kiss, Barbara Streisand. The list goes on and on. Now, to get your 12 records or tapes for only $1, all you do is look for the secret gold box. This one, right on the savings certificate. Secret? You bet. You see, there's no explanation, just the gold box. It won't mean a thing to anyone who hasn't seen this commercial. Inside the box, write the number of the additional record or tape you want as a bonus gift. Then, list your other 11 choices in these boxes and mail the postpaid card. Mind you, that 12th record or tape is an extra bonus you just earned because you tuned in to me at this moment. Remember, it's our secret, so watch your mail for this package from Columbia and be sure to look for the secret gold box and to use it.
From Chicago, that was the Swavies with Mop Bucket off their brand new album Tears of Joy. If you want to listen to all this great music without having to hear me ramble between songs, be sure to check out our Bend and Scoop Spotify playlist. If we played it and they have it, you can listen to it there. And if you enjoy listening to what we do here on Bend and Scoop, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really enjoy what we do here at Bend and Scoop and would like to show your support, please feel free to drop a little something in our virtual tip jar at patreon.com/bendscoop. Whenever Friday rolls around, knowing you're going to hear a new episode of Bend and Scoop gets me all gung-ho.
Hans Stevenson invited the Japanese.
You know, my dad was over here with the army in, I guess it was 1940. Hey, did you decorate this place yourself?
To put his town back to work.
Welcome to your first day with the Sun Motors.
Now, everything is on his shoulders.
Let's do it and do it our way.
I thought it handled great.
And it's all in the hands of Ron Howard, the director of Splash and Cocoon.
This is great.
What could possibly go wrong?
Good question. Let's go find out. be a team.
In Japan, our goal is 0% of defense. How'd you slip by?
Everyone thinking only of company.
See, we have our own way of making cars. This is Looney Tunes.
Looney Tunes?
I've heard a lot of talk about how good the Japanese businessmen are.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't get it. I don't see it. I'm not impressed.
You're fired.
He's coming!
I can't stand it anymore.
Safety glass. You failed.
They're closing down the factory and going back to Japan.
I'm calling all the guys, and we're coming over to get you.
Oh, drown yourself. At least take off your watch.
I would love another chance. I know we could do better.
Can we do it? Can we do it? Can we do it?
Paramount Pictures presents
I came to tell you you were great tonight. I was really proud of you.
Michael Keaton
Whoa, yikes. Whoops. Oh, whoa.
in a Ron Howard production.
Is it just me, or you hate the way your shorts feel when they get wet?
I actually kind of like it.
Really?
Gung Ho.
That's all, folks.
People listen to people. So listen, people.
Welcome to the Groovin' After Party. Come on in and pour yourself a cold one.
Joining me now on our Groovin' After Party here on Bend and Scoop is Mistress Carrie from the Mistress Carrie podcast. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So tell everybody about the Mistress Carrie podcast.
Well, the Mistress Carrie podcast is kind of the next step in my career, I guess, for anyone outside of New England. I spent 22 years on the air at legendary rock station WAAF in Boston. And AAF was a taste-making rock station. It was a station for 50 years. And I was there for 29, but spent 22 of those on the air. And AAF was one of those stations that helped to make careers, to help break bands. And I was always at shows trying to help bands. I was the music director and the assistant program director for over 15 years. And when AAF went off the air, like 2 weeks before the world turned into a shit show, last February. And when that happened, this is a station I grew up listening to. So it was like, not only was this where I worked for 29 years, but it was also the radio station that was kind of associated with every musical memory I had growing up. And so then after the station went off the air, I had a bunch of job interviews, and then COVID hit, and it was like, wow, okay, the world is changing. And people had yelled at me for years for not having my own podcast. And I had a podcast through WAAF, a place where I could go and do like long form interviews. I did like 37 episodes. It was called the Mistress Carrie Side Piece. You can still find the episodes out there in the
That's a great name.
Ethos somewhere. Thank you. And, it was kind of like the other thing that I did besides just being on the air at AAF. And I love doing it because I love talking to people. And when you do interviews on the radio, you're always trying to get into the next song. You're trying to get into commercials. You're always very conscious of the time and obviously the language, right?
Yeah.
And so I decided once COVID hit to gut a room in my house and build my own studio for whatever was going to come my way. I knew I was going to need a place to work. And so last June, I launched the Mistress Carrie podcast. And I apologize for the name. I tried to come up with something funny and whatever. And everybody said, look, you've been on the air at AAF for 22 years with the name Mistress Carrie. You are an idiot if you name it anything else. And
you've established your brand.
Exactly. So the Mistress Carrie podcast was born June 10th of 2020. I think episode 1 came out, and that was with Brent Smith from Shinedown. And basically, to make a long story short, the podcast is a rock lifestyle podcast. So I obviously am talking to the artists, both old legacy brand artists that have been around for decades. A lot of the artists that came up during my years on the radio, but also to give a voice and a place for newer artists that may or may not have a place where they can find their audience. But it's also a place where instrument manufacturers, roadies, authors. I mean, I interviewed Metallica's whiskey distiller. I interview members of our military, radio hosts. If it's involved in the rock lifestyle in any way, tattoos, motorcycles, booze, hot rods, all of that goes into what it is that makes up rock and roll to me. And so the podcast is kind of a place for all of that to happen. It's a weekly podcast. It comes out every Wednesday. And then if you subscribe every weekday, Monday through Friday, you get something that I call the situation report or the sit rep. Mm-hmm. And I boil down all of the rock news, music headlines, entertainment info, and it's 5 minutes long, and you get it every weekday so that if you don't have a lot of time, but you want to know what's going on, you subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. And every morning while you're making your coffee or shaving or whatever it is that you do in the morning, you can get caught up on everything that's going on and then get on with your day.
I recently I went back because I wanted to find the best episode to start with. And I immediately, when I saw Nancy Wilson, that jumped out at me. I'm like, I've got to listen to this. I read the book that she and Ann did a few years back. And I was so glad to hear that. And that there actually are finally doing a movie, that they really need to have a movie done about Ann and Nancy, because that's just a great story.
Well, if there's a Mount Rushmore of women in rock and roll, the Wilson sisters have a place on that mountainside. I mean, and listening to her in that interview, which, by the way, massive technical issues on her part. It was so frustrating. And I did everything I could to make it sound as good as I could. But it was really interesting to hear her talking about going to see the Beatles when she was a kid.
Yeah.
And she was already in a band with her sister and some other girls when they were like 9. And to hear her talk about how she aspired to be the Beatles, not to be with the Beatles. And that really struck me, because to be girls at that age in that era and to be so far ahead in their thought of, it never even crossed their mind that it wouldn't be possible for her and her sister to be the Beatles.
Yeah.
Exactly. And maybe that was the naivete of young girls, but they just didn't see it as being something impossible for girls to be. And those women have just plowed the road for generations of women, to the point where, and this is something that comes up on my podcast a lot, you know, in the early days of my radio career, you would refer to a band as a female fronted rock band or chick rock or whatever. There's so much rock and roll that just happens to have a woman or two in the band now that it's not a novelty anymore. And that's partly because of women like the Wilson sisters, that they paved the way.
Yeah. And even I think about that periodically, because at the beginning of each episode of my podcast, I'll play 10 or 11 new indie rock tracks. And it'll occur to me, I'll just kind of randomly be listening to the track list I'll set up for an episode. And like a lot of times more than half of them are fronted by women. And it's like, it's not even a second thought anymore. It's just, that's just what it is, you know?
But when I started my radio career, so I started on the air in 1998, and AAF was a take no prisoners rock station. I mean, we broke bands like Tool, Rage Against the Machine, Korn, Limp Bizkit, Deftones, Seven Dust. Like, we were heavy as fuck back then.
Yeah.
To play that stuff in the morning, like on the air all day. And when I started on the air, I was the only woman on the air. And I remember meetings when a band would come out that had a female singer, and it was like there was room for one. And if there was one female fronted, you know, with the bunny quotes, female fronted act on the radio, it was like, well, we have a chick band. We don't need another one. And to come so far in my own career, and I talk a lot about this when I interview people like Taylor Momsen or Lizzie Hale or Amy Lee or Diamante or all these amazing women in rock right now. It's like women like me and women that are older have been waiting for this time where you being a woman wasn't going to be something that defined the music you made. Like, female fronted rock is not a genre of rock. It's just rock. It just happens to have a woman in the band. And now there's so many women that it's just, the drummer in your band is a woman. Oh, okay. Well, she's a kick-ass drummer. It doesn't, but it also is a testament, to people like Alice Cooper, that have Nita in the band. Like, it's just such a different way than it was when even I started in the music business. And you don't think of the late 90s as being a time where this would have still been a concern, but it still was in a lot of ways.
Yeah. But fortunately, like you said, we've come a long way, and it's really been a lot of progress. And like you said, Nancy and Ann were the trailblazers. They really set the stage for sure.
Yeah.
So, Carrie, let's learn a little bit more about your personal musical journey. And we're going to play around with something we like to call, is that your vinyl answer? And we'll start by asking you if you remember, what was the first record you remember buying with your own money back when you were a kid growing up?
I grew up in a house with parents that loved rock music. And so I remember my dad gave me the love of all things with a horn section, right? So it was like the Association and Three Dog Night and Chicago and stuff like the Beach Boys. I remember listening to Jethro Tull and looking at the album cover. And I got my love of the Beatles from my mom, which is like one of the biggest gifts that I think my mom ever gave me, was this love and appreciate. Like, I remember listening to the White Album on 8-track when I was little, which probably explains a lot about how I ended up as an adult. So I remember having my own vinyl
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember if it's vinyl I asked people to buy for me or if it's vinyl I bought with my own money. But I remember having Leif Garrett.
Okay.
I remember having Foreigner 4. I remember having Queen News of the World, which I still have with the robot on the cover.
Yeah.
I remember wearing out, this was when I was a little older, but that Aerosmith Greatest Hits album, the red cover, I wore out countless copies of that. I also remember, embarrassingly enough, having Disco Duck on vinyl.
Rick Dees.
Yeah. And I don't know what I had first. I just remember this little suitcase turntable that I had, you know, the one that like the little white record player. And then I upgraded to this record player that had detachable speakers. Like I don't ever remember a time growing up that I didn't have a turntable that was my own, not just my parents, but my parents encouraged me from a very early age to have my own music. I had the little 45, like little suitcase and my little turntable. So that's the vinyl I remember having as a kid, but I don't remember, which one I bought first. But when I talk to bands a lot and I talk about the two eras in your musical journey.
Yeah.
There's the music you inherit that you get taught.
Yeah.
And then there's the music that you decide this is mine.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the music that I learned that was mine, I remember I was in the 6th grade in 1984 and I had Pyromania. I had Van Halen 1984 and I had on my wall, I had the Kiss bicentennial poster. And so like the 3 rock bands that I remember having that were mine were Van Halen, Def Leppard, and Kiss when I was a little kid.
And that's pretty stout and heady for any 6th grader, much less a 6th grade girl. That's really advanced rock for back in that day. Because 1984 is the year I graduated high school. So I definitely remember all those records very well. But I'm trying to think in 6th grade, I was probably still listening to more AM, like pop stuff. I wasn't really.
Yeah.
It took me a few more years to get into rock. So yeah, that's awesome. Now,
there was always rock music around, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember like the earliest stuff that you had? You know, you talked about the Queen and Foreigner and all that. Back then, where would you go when you went to buy records? Was there a local record store or did you go like to Kmart or something? Where would you buy them?
Woolworths.
Woolworths.
Do you have Woolworths?
I remember Woolworths. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Woolworths was in the mall and Woolworths not only sold music, but they sold the craziest colored nail polish. And so I could go in there and get like blue nail polish or like whatever, because I've always painted my nails crazy colors. I've always done crazy things with my hair. And so I would go to the mall with my friends, which was like one of the places, you know, back then, that's what you did. Just went to the mall and walked around. And I would go and I would spend my money on makeup, crazy nail polish colors, and vinyl. And then into cassettes, like in the mid to late 80s when I got into high school and really got into like metal and the hair bands and all of that kind of stuff. I transitioned into cassettes, but yeah, I went to Woolworths most of the time. And then as I got older and was able to drive, then I could go to places like Strawberries, which were like, I don't know if you have Strawberries. I don't know like what's a regional chain and what wasn't, but Strawberries Records and Tapes was like the freestanding brick and mortar record store that you could go to, but they didn't have them in the mall and my parents drove me to the mall. So I had to buy my records where I could get to.
I think there was like a fruit themed chain set up back in those days because we had peaches back instead of strawberries.
Yeah. So. Probably owned by the same parent company, I bet. And then it wasn't until I moved to college and was in Boston that I had access to like a Tower Records, to like the big famous, because it was in the city. So then I had access to like the Tower Records and could go there and buy stuff. And I still have all this stuff, by the way.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. If you still have all that stuff.
I do. I still I am a pack rat that collects and I don't get rid of anything.
Man, that's awesome. Who do you own the most albums by?
Oh, man. Probably the Beatles.
Okay, what's your favorite Beatles record?
Oh, man,
At
that's
least right
hard.
at this moment. I know it may change.
I wrote my senior thesis in college on the Beatles' influence on modern music. And, literally every band I interview, the Beatles comes up at one point or another. And it's like, I vacillate between Sgt. Pepper, obviously. Rubber Soul is a really powerful record because that was kind of like when the Beatles went from being the mop top dudes in suits to like, we're going to do all the drugs and start doing weird shit. So I have this love of Rubber Soul, but man, the White Album is so good.
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends on the day for me. I love it all so much. I love the early sing-along poppy Paul McCartney pop songs of the Beatles.
Yeah.
And then I love the more complicated kind of dark and brooding Lennon, traumatized Beatles stuff. And I love the experimentation. If you told me like to name Beatles songs, like I could sit here for like an hour and just rattle them. I just love them so much.
And, talking about what you said, discussing with bands and including, hard rock and metal bands, it's amazing that a band like the Beatles could have influence across so many different wide variety of genres. And like somebody like Lemmy was such a huge Beatles fan. It's like, that's just insane.
So was Ozzy.
Yeah.
So was Ozzy. They're his favorite band.
Yeah. And it's like, how did Black Sabbath come from the Beatles? But it's like, okay, I guess it's just that just inspired them to get into music,
I think it was Jacoby Shaddix from Papa Roach when I interviewed him. I think it was Helter Skelter that he said. And he was like, everybody gives Sabbath credit for kind of inventing heavy metal, but the Beatles kind of did that with like Helter Skelter and like the screaming and it was just so ahead of its time.
Yeah. It was almost like metal and punk rock, a little bit of both way before either. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that when you listen to those records, listening to them with today's ears is just not fair because it's like you have to listen to them in comparison to everything that was out there at the time and technologically what was available at the time to really understand how advanced they were.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you happen to see the McCartney Rick Rubin thing on?
Did you hear me and Nancy Wilson talk about that?
That's right. That's right. You guys did talk about that. I forgot.
That. Yeah. That thing I love every minute of that.
It was amazing. Like, and my wife, she's only kind of a casual music fan, but she was really entranced by the whole thing too. We were watching and I love like Rick Rubin had those strips of tape that he would just put on whenever they were going to listen to a different thing. It was just great.
Anybody that's ever been in a recording studio, that's how they label the board.
Yeah, exactly.
And so as soon as the first episode started and I saw all the pieces of tape, I was like, oh, I know exactly what he's going to do. And I loved that he had the masters so that he could bring things up and make them louder that may have been buried in the final mix of the song to call attention to things like his bass lines and the way that they structured harmonies and the guitar tones and, even Ringo's drum beats that, of course, Ringo becomes like the punchline of the Beatles, like he never got the respect that he deserved for his role in the Beatles. But I loved, and only a producer like Rick Rubin could do something like that, to be able to really analyze the tracks and the recording of these masterful records. I wanted so many more episodes of that show.
Yeah,
I hope they make another season of it. I loved it.
And there was stuff, even having known and loved and followed the Beatles for my whole life, there were things that I didn't even know. Like I had no idea that crazy guitar solo in Taxman was Paul. Like Paul played that. So like, wait, Paul's the bass player. What is he doing a jam guitar solo like that? But he did it.
The biggest epiphany for me was the analysis of the difference in upbringing between Lennon and McCartney.
Yeah.
And how that affected their writing style. And now it seems like such an obvious thing that Paul is so polished and the harmonies and the pop sensibility. And it's happy because he had a happy childhood and an upbringing.
The eternal optimist. Yeah.
Yes. And Lennon was the exact opposite. And that's where the cynicism came from. And and that juxtaposition that is what makes the Beatles brilliant.
Yep.
That is what made their songwriting work. And it is a direct reflection of their upbringing. And I never thought about it that way. And I literally paused my TV and had to sit there for a minute and be like, A, how did you never realize that yourself? And B, I just started going through the Rolodex of the songs I love going, oh my God, it is that. It's either the pop sensibility in the music and the Lennon lyrics or the pop lyrics and this foreboding, dark music that came from Lennon. It's like, it's the perfect combination. And I never picked up on it. It changed everything about how I listened to them after I saw that.
Yeah, that was just amazing insight. And like you said, to give you a whole new perspective of their music. Carrie, is there a specific album by the Beatles or anyone that you've purchased more times over the years than any other?
There are certain albums that come up in these times of my life. Like I have purchased countless copies of Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime. I have purchased countless copies of Slippery When Wet. I have purchased countless copies of the Southern Harmony and the Musical Companion, the Black Crowes. There are just like one of the things that my mom did that I inherited is she marks eras of her life based on the music and the albums that she was listening to in that time. Like I remember the 6th grade and it was Van Halen and Def Leppard. Like I remember all of the memories, like some people's memories are tied to smell, some are tied to taste. Some people's memories are tactile, so you feel a fabric or a certain thing and it reminds you. Mine are so ingrained in the music that I listen to. And all of those albums are these eras, like it's so random, but Steve Vai Flexible was such a huge record for me, like in high school. I can't even tell you how many copies of that record I've purchased because it's one of those things where it's like, well, I had it on cassette and then CDs came out and I had to get it on CD. Then I had to get a digital copy of it. So I have that like in my iTunes when you would just go in and like download and buy music.
Yeah.
And it's just, there are just certain records. I've probably purchased every Tool record 2 or 3 times. I have my mom's original copies of all her Beatles records. I have her 8-tracks and I have her albums. So I've purchased my own copies on CD and digitally downloaded because I don't want to ruin them by listening to them. So like there's definitely stuff that I've purchased multiple copies of.
How big is your vinyl collection currently and who has the largest one of anyone you know?
I mean, I think my music collection is pretty significant, but it's spread out just like my radio career and all my recordings over multiple kinds of media, right? Sure. So it's like I've got cassettes and 8-tracks but I've probably got like hundreds of vinyl albums. My coworker, Mike Shue, who I worked with at WAF for 20 years and now work with him again on the Pike, which is a rock station we're both on again. He does mornings, I do afternoons. He used to do this video series on WAF on our website called The Vinyl Dump. I mean, he has been obsessed with vinyl for years and he would sit on a toilet in the bathroom and analyze an album. And that's what it's called, Vinyl Dump. And I have never seen his entire vinyl collection, but I would guess that out of everybody I know, Mike Shue probably has the most significant vinyl collection. That guy is an encyclopedia of music. He puts me to shame when it comes to his music knowledge. It is unbelievable how smart he is in general, but his music knowledge is just unreal.
Yeah. I've got a couple of friends like that where it's like, I couldn't even ballpark the size of the collection. It's so big.
Yeah. And I love that it's back too. I love that it's back and that bands I don't understand why bands are bringing cassettes back, but I'm so glad that bands have brought vinyl back in such a big way.
Yeah, vinyl makes sense. You're right. Cassettes is just kind of bizarre kitsch. I don't know what the point of that is.
I think it's these bands that are looking back to the 80s with this reverence.
Yeah.
And I have joked with so many bands on my podcast that any band that sells a cassette of their new album, it should come with a pencil with the band's logo on it. So when you have a cassette emergency and it unspools and gets eaten in your cassette player, that you get a commemorative pencil to get in there and wind it back up again. And no one has taken that marketing genius idea from me.
Yeah, that is an excellent idea. That is brilliant.
Just don't understand. If they understood the plight of a cassette listener, they wouldn't have brought them back. But vinyl just makes all the sense in the world, both sonically and just the experience of being able to look at it. And
do you have a favorite mom and pop record store, either now or from the past?
I mean, there are some vinyl stores still. There's one in Worcester that is, I believe it's Jack's Record Shop. I don't want to say that's, I'm almost positive that's what it is in Worcester, but what is the name of it? No, I'm going to die. Hold on.
Because part of what we do with this podcast is we really try to focus on spotlighting some of those mom and pop record stores now that vinyl's making a resurgence, and especially with the whole pandemic and COVID having kind of taken a hit to some of those places, we really want to make sure that they are able to survive and thrive. So I'm always trying to find out from my guests where they go, and we'll try and give them some pub.
It's Joe's Albums in Worcester.
Joe's Albums. All right.
Yeah, it's Joe's Albums in Worcester. They have a great online part of their business, so you can actually buy vinyl from them off their website.
Nice.
But they've got a pretty extensive vinyl selection, and they service and sell like the equipment too.
Okay.
And they're one of those places that you go in and the place is like meticulous, like Dewey Decimal System, like meticulously filed and alphabetized. You can tell that someone that really loves what they do does it.
Yeah.
Jack's is in Cambridge. Joe's is in Worcester. So sorry, I got them confused.
Oh, that's okay.
But yeah,
there is a Jack's.
Joe's Albums in Worcester.
Okay, so there's a Joe's and a Jack's.
Yeah, Jack's is in Cambridge, but Joe's Albums in Worcester is just this amazing place. They have a great website. Like I said, you can go on there and shop in their store. And they definitely are not one of those old dusty record stores that has not embraced new technology. Like they want to, be online and be a resource for people even that can't go there and shop.
Yeah. So one last question for you. What is your all-time favorite cover song?
Man, do you know that I'm a cover freak? Is that why you brought it up? Because
no. We just added that question a month or two ago.
So I used to do a covers feature on the air at AAF, and I've actually been talking to the radio stations that I'm on now about bringing it back because I love cover songs.
Yeah.
And I actually, if you go on my Spotify, I have got a ton of playlists up on my Spotify account that are public, so you can go in and see them. But I make a playlist on Spotify for every episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast. So all the music from the artists I'm talking to, and then all the music that we referenced in that episode all goes in the playlist. But then I always put together playlists for Halloween and Christmas and summer songs. And I'm always, just because I was a music director, so I would schedule the music on the radio station. And I've got a cover song playlist on Spotify that's got hundreds of cover songs in it.
So hard to narrow that down to one.
It is, but I look at cover songs and I look at doing them two ways, right? You either are going to do them true to the original,
yeah,
or you're going to totally change it and make it your own, which is risky because if you do it poorly and it doesn't hold up against the original, I am madly in love with the Johnny Cash Hurt cover.
Yes.
Because I'm such a huge Nine Inch Nails fan, and I love that cover. It's just, and the video, it's so powerful and sad and emotional, and it rivals the original.
Yeah.
I love Tool's cover of No Quarter,
which is a very difficult song to cover.
The
degree of difficulty
really
is very high on that.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Then there's the obvious stuff I get made fun of all the time, and the people that listen to your podcast are going to make fun of me about this too. But when I was a kid, one of my favorite movies was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Oh, the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton.
Yes. I refuse to apologize for loving that movie. And that Aerosmith cover was like such a moment for me because they were like these scary villains when I was a little kid because they were trying to like warp, Strawberry Field's brain. And so that version of Come Together has this emotional place in my heart because I love that movie growing up so much.
I had a guest
literally.
recently, I think it might have even been the last show or two. It was very recently, who had that as his favorite cover song. And we talked about the movie briefly. And my whole point to him was, even though that was a Beatles original, if there ever was a song with lyrics and pacing and cadence almost tailor-made for Steven Tyler, that was the song.
So good.
Yeah.
It's so good. And I can't tell you how many times during my radio career I have had to scold people for not knowing that that's a Beatles song because they assumed, because they had never heard the Beatles song, they had only heard the Aerosmith cover and they thought it was an Aerosmith song. And so for a band like Aerosmith to take a song that is such a huge Beatles song and to have people confuse it and think it's an Aerosmith song says how good it is.
I also really like the Alice Cooper cover from that movie as well, because that was really good too.
I just interviewed Alice Cooper recently and I ran out of time and I wanted to ask him about that and the Muppet Show. And I'm such a huge Muppet fan that I opted to ask him about the Muppets and not about that. But, Peter Frampton said in his book that his manager made him do that movie for the money. Cause he had been addicted to, his manager got him addicted to Coke and he was having money troubles. And I was like, man, don't tool on one of my favorite movies of all time. I know people hate it and you watch it and technically it doesn't hold up all that well and whatever, but I refuse to apologize for having this sentimental value attached to that movie.
I mean, it was probably better done than Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. So you've got to give them credit for the production.
Really? Yeah. Seriously. And I always loved the Bee Gees, even though it wasn't cool to love the Bee Gees. Yeah. And I don't know if you watched that documentary, but I absolutely loved that documentary as well. And, you might not like the disco era in music, but you cannot take away their songwriting ability.
Did you hear the Foo Fighters album?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Speaking of great cover songs, hearing Dave Grohl sing You Should Be Dancing falsetto, come on, man, it's great.
Yeah.
Great.
I went on Record Store Day and got snatched that one right up. That was
absolutely.
Just the title.
I
alone,
love Record Store Day. I know, right? I just think Record Store Day is just such a great thing. And I love that so many major artists take part in it.
Yeah.
That it's just so widely embraced by the industry that it doesn't matter how big of an artist, the biggest of the biggest of the biggest artists take part in Record Store Day. And I just love that the industry as a whole gets behind locally owned independent record stores. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. It's just a great thing. And I'm glad they're doing them now multiple times a year. It's fantastic. It really is.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Carrie, how can folks follow you and your podcast on social media?
You can find me everywhere. The easiest way to find everything is to go to mistresscarrie.com. All of my links for social media, the playlists, the podcast episodes are all up there. The Mistress Carrie podcast is available. It doesn't matter where you listen to podcasts. You'll find it. You'll see my purple hair on my logo and you'll know it's me.
Great logo. I love the logo.
Thank you. I've had purple hair for so long. It's literally been 31 years now. I dyed it on my 18th birthday.
Wow.
And it's been purple every day since my 18th birthday. And it's now to the point where my own mom wouldn't recognize me without it. So when it came time to make artwork for the podcast and everything, it was it had to say it was me. And seriously, the headphones, the microphone, the purple hair, that is me. So if you go to mistresscarrie.com, but I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm everywhere. You can find me on Patreon. I make Cameo videos. You can search Mistress Carrie on Cameo. And
awesome.
But just go to the website, mistresscarrie.com, has everything.
Well, thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate you taking time and joining us here. Really enjoyed talking with you. And like I said, your podcast is great, folks. Give it a listen. You'll really enjoy it.
I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you. Coming out of the radio background and diving into podcasting the way that I did not anticipate the podcast community being so welcoming, because radio is the exact opposite. That like you can't even acknowledge another radio station or DJ because it's so cutthroat. And I expected podcasting to kind of be that way. And I was wrong. The podcasting community has been so welcoming to me. And I'm just in awe of this entire community. And I just think it's so amazing that so many lovers of music kind of have found a way to all support each other and to support the music that we all love. So I really appreciate you having me on your show.
Don't worry about it, guys. It's all in the mix.
Bye-bye, lardass.
Bend and Scoop is a production of Lukewarm Tallboy Studios.
We will return tomorrow morning with the sun.
Good evening, and have a good life.